I just wanted to share everyone an idea I saw from the Chofetz Chaim in this week's Parsha Shlach. In this week's Parsha we have the story of the Meraglim going down to Eretz Yisrael, checking out, trying to understand what Eretz Yisrael is about, whether Calev Yehoshua were able to conquer Eretz Yisrael. And we see that on the one hand we have the 10 Meraglim who come back with the bad report of Eretz Yisrael, and on the other hand we have Yehoshua and Calev that were defending Calev Yisrael being able to conquer Eretz Yisrael. So the 10 on the one, the 2 on the other. The Chofetz Chaim points out that we see that the story of Calev and Yehoshua within this whole story of the Meraglim were very different. They each had different roles and different events that happened to them and different approaches that they had. And he points out that there were 4 main differences that we see in the Parsha between Yehoshua and Calev. Number 1, he points out that only Yehoshua got the name changed. Moshe Rabbeinu saw that this was going to be an Nisayon, and the pasuk says that he changed Moshe Rabbeinu to Yehoshua. He took the Yud and he added it onto Moshe Rabbeinu to create Yehoshua. Rashi says, as a tefillah, as a bracha that kodesh yachla Hashem, that should protect him, should save him from Atzas Meraglim. Calev, we don't see that he had that happen to him. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't approach Calev and give him that extra protection, or asking Hashem for a special Yeshua for Calev. That's one difference. That's one difference that we see between Yehoshua and Calev. A second difference is that in Eretz Canaan, we see that when the Meraglim saw the giants and how dangerous it could be for Calev Yehoshua to come in, Calev ran to the Kibbutz Avos and downed him. We don't see Yehoshua doing that. Yehoshua didn't go. It was only Calev that went. Ask the Chofetz Chaim why. Yehoshua also, he realized the danger, the potential danger of what was going on with the Meraglim. He also should have gone to David. Why was it only Calev that went? A third difference is that when the Meraglim were telling over the story and telling them, yes, it's an Eretz Zavas Challah V'Dvash, but they're strong people that live there, strong cities. It was only Calev that got up and quieted the Meraglim. Yehoshua didn't say anything. It was Vayas Calev. Vayas Calev. Where was Yehoshua? Why was it only Calev that got up to protest against what the Meraglim was saying? Lastly, is that at the end of the whole story, we see that the Torah specifically praises Calev. The pasuk says, "Va'avdi Calev, eikev hoysar ruach acheres imoy, va'imale acharoi va'avyosiv al haaretz asher ba shama v'zar yorishenu." Calev is referred as an Eved of Hashem. He had a ruach acheres imoy. He went after Hashem. The pasuk praises Calev. It doesn't praise Yehoshua. What's going on? The Chofetz Chaim explains that in dealing with Ra, dealing with evil in this world, there's really 2 approaches, there are 2 ways in how we can deal when we're confronted with evil in this world. The one way is that when we see it, or it's in front of us, we can separate ourselves from it, we can shout out, we can protest, we can make sure that we have absolutely nothing to do with that Ra, with that evil influence that's in front of us. The other way is to enjoy with it, to pretend that you're part of that. In your heart, you know you want nothing to do with it, but you don't scream, you don't fight, you don't put in your boxing gloves, to confront and to clash with that Ra. Explains the Chofetz Chaim, these two approaches were the two approaches of Yehoshua and the approach of Calev. Yehoshua, we know from the Zohar says that what was the reason that the Meraglim came out against going into Eretz Yisrael is that they knew that when they were going to enter into Eretz Yisrael, that their stature, their level, their position in Klal Yisrael was going to drop. They wouldn't be needed within Eretz Canaan, within Eretz Yisrael. However, Yehoshua is going to be the man of Klal Yisrael when he gets into Eretz Yisrael. He was going to be elevated in position. He didn't have that negia. He didn't have that influence of trying to just convince Klal Yisrael not to go into Eretz Yisrael. He didn't have that agenda. From the outset, the Meraglim knew that there was Yehoshua on one side and it was them on the other side. Calev, on the other hand, he was one of the heads of the Shvatim. There was no reason for him not to have that agenda. Yeshua's approach was to fight out against what the Meraglim were doing. He was never a part of them. He went along with the Meraglim, but the Meraglim knew that they weren't on the same page. However, with Calev, they thought that Calev was one of them. Calev was one of them. He's also going to lose his stature coming into Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, Calev had this opportunity of joining with them, thinking inside within himself he's not a part of them, but as if putting his arm around them and entering into Eretz Yisrael as one of the Meraglim. He explains the Chofetz Chaim, that's why Yehoshua got the extra yud, the extra shmirah. He says, because on the one hand, it's very good that we separate ourselves from the evil and we clash with the evil. But on the other hand, it can be very dangerous. It's a battle, it's a fight. You need a special Yeshua. Kol Yeshiach Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu specifically davened for Yeshua because he realized the position that he held within the Meraglim was a dangerous one. Calev didn't need that. He was one of the Meraglim. Calev, when he was in Eretz Yisrael, and he saw that the Meraglim he saw the giants in Eretz Yisrael, and the Meraglim taking notes as if that this is something we're going to bring back. He was worried about that negative influence. Because as much as it might be good to be diplomatic and shrewd and go along with it, but there's always that evil that can rub off. So Calev, when he saw that was coming up, he quickly ran to the Kivrei Avos to daven for protection from that influence. He had to protect himself from that influence. When the Meraglim were telling over the story, so they knew that we couldn't give the microphone to Yehoshua to speak because he for sure is not on this. Calev, however, you'll allow him to speak because he's one of us. Calev gets up to speak. And he refers to Moshe, Rashi says, as Ben Amram in seemingly negative ways. So they think, okay, this is good, he's on our side. And he starts telling, no, Moshe Rabbeinu, HaKadosh Baruch has taken us out of Mitzrayim, done all the miracles, he can take us into Eretz Yisrael as well. That's why Calev was able to protest. He was in a position that he could make a difference because they believed that he was one of them. Lastly, the praise that the Torah gives for Calev. For Avdi Calev Ekev Hoysa Ruach Acheres Imois. Rashi says, what's Ruach Acheres? Shtei Ruchos. Achas Bepeh, Achas Belev. That was something that was unique to Caleb's approach. He was able to maintain as if he's together with them, but really inside was completely separate. That was the praise of the Torah of HaKadosh Baruch for Calev. When the Chofetz Chaim ends off, and he asks, so which is the correct approach? The correct approach is if we confront evil to scream, to protest, to fight, to make sure they're on that side and we're on the other side. Or maybe not, maybe to be diplomatic, go along with them, pretend you're one of them, but inside you hold it yourself as different. And maybe when it comes to that critical turning point, then you'll make the move. Which is the right approach? The Chofetz Chaim brings the Medrash. And the Medrash says that Yehoshua and Calev were shavim, they were equal. The Chofetz Chaim asked, they were equal. We know Yehoshua, he was the Talmud Muvak of Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. He was the one that got got the height. Yeshua is going to be the future manning of Calev Yehoshua. How could it be that Yeshua and Calev were equal? Says the Chofetz Chaim. They weren't equal in Madrega, but their approaches are of equal importance. And he explains that yes, there's the approach of the fighting against the evil on the one hand, and there's the approach of being the diplomatic and shrewd one and being smart on the other hand. Explains the Chofetz Chaim, both approaches are shown. Both approaches, they have their time, they have their place, and perhaps have the people that each one can operate in their own way. I think the message for us, we live in a world that there's a lot of that around, whether it's people, other influences, and we need to know how to deal, when to come out fighting against, when to go along and make a difference from within. Chofetz Chaim is telling us a very important message. And the message is that both approaches are correct. Hashem should give us Yad Shmai to know, to understand, and to use the Chachma to know when to use each approach and to make a difference.